The series begins in a serene house nestled in the forest, where geologist Ish enjoys a peaceful life. One morning, he sets out for a nearby quarry to search for pyrite, ignoring a call from his mother as he leaves. While examining rocks, he is suddenly bitten by a snake. Panicked, he drops his phone down a hill and resorts to cutting the wound with a knife to suck out the venom. Ish rushes home, drinks some water and collapses on his bed, slipping into a delirious state. Hours later, his condition worsens. His hand is swollen, and he is paralyzed, unable to respond to a knocking on the door or the sound of a helicopter outside. By evening, he clumsily crawls to get more water, but he spills it and has to drink from the floor. As he calls out for his mother, a text from her arrives on his phone reading, "We love you." After several days, Ish wakes up, his hand healed. He cleans his house, starts his car after some effort, and drives to town, only to find it eerily deserted. As he explores, he discovers rotting bodies on the streets and inside vehicles. Military vehicles and ominous signs reveal a global pandemic has swept the world, with the US government suspended. Horrified, Ish returns to his family home, where he discovers his parents have succumbed to the virus. Devastated, he buries them in the backyard, placing a kiss on their foreheads as a final goodbye. He rests in his childhood bed, but awakens determined to keep searching. Ish explores the town and finds dozens of bodies in a church. He gathers supplies, including a gun, and drives to a bridge, only to find it blocked. Frustrated, he screams before taking another road to Las Vegas, which is also completely empty. Ish searches buildings but finds no survivors. Taking a moment to relax, he lounges in a jacuzzi, then heads to a bar for a drink. There, he is startled by voices, Milton and Anne, two survivors who reveal they are immune and have been stranded since the pandemic began. Milton shows Ish a recorded announcement explaining the virus's unknown origins, rapid spread, and the ultimate failure of vaccines. Panic led to chaos, and governments worldwide collapsed. Anne shares her heartbreaking story of watching her family die during a video call. As the trio drinks, Ish recalls his parents warning him about a new sickness, but he hadn't taken it seriously. Milton and Anne reveal that the virus wiped out nations, leaving only a handful of survivors. The next morning, Ish finds Anne trying on expensive clothes in a store. He questions whether life still has meaning, and Anne replies that a beating heart doesn't equate to being truly alive. Over breakfast, Ish learns Milton's wife died in the hotel. When Ish announces his plans to leave, Anne storms off, upset. Milton tries to convince Ish to stay, showing him their generator and food supplies. He also reveals a grim pact he and Anne made. When their food runs out, they will end their lives. Milton asks why anyone would want to live when everything they loved is gone. Before leaving, Ish asks Anne to come with him. She refuses but kisses him passionately, which he reluctantly pushes away. As Ish departs, he hears 2 gunshots from the hotel. Furious and heartbroken, Ish drives recklessly down the road, narrowly avoiding hitting a dog. He stops just in time, leaving viewers on edge as his journey continues. Seeing the dog as a sign of hope, Ish names him Lucky and decides to take him along. His next stop is the library, where he gathers as many survival books as he can find. Unsure of what else to do, Ish returns to his old house, planning to start a new life with Lucky. A year passes, and Ish is still alive. He keeps himself occupied with chores and exercise, but the isolation begins to take its toll. Sometimes he drives his car in circles just to feel a sense of motion. One morning, Lucky's barking alerts him to smoke rising in the distance. Ish and Lucky quickly drive into town, following the smoke to a house. On the roof, a woman named Emma appears with a gun. She lowers it when Ish explains his situation and invites him inside, where they share tea and bread. The two get along well, and when Ish prepares to leave, Emma convinces him to stay the night. The next morning, Ish persuades Emma to move in with him, reasoning that they can keep each other company. While Emma explores the house, Ish discreetly removes a noose he had once hung during a moment of hopelessness. Emma soon notices rats have gotten into the pantry, prompting a trip to town for supplies. At the store, they ignore the stench of decaying bodies and a few rats to gather what they need. As days pass, Ish and Emma settle into a new routine. They plant vegetables, go fishing for food, and observe animals reclaiming the town. Emma gives Ish a haircut while he starts building a chicken coop, with hopes of starting a small farm. Eventually, their relationship becomes romantic. When Ish's car runs out of gas, he siphons fuel from abandoned vehicles in town. He also starts installing solar panels on the house. One morning, Ish slips off the roof while working, injuring his ankle. Emma helps him inside, and cares for him, admitting that she misses the company of more people. Later, she cries while looking at old photos of her family. As Ish recovers, he resumes his projects. One day, Emma announces she's pregnant, which shocks Ish. He struggles with the idea of bringing a child into a post-apocalyptic world. Determined to prepare, he looks for books on childbirth at the library, which is overrun with rats. Months later, the couple's farm thrives with vegetables and chickens. However, Emma mentions she needs more protein, so Ish reluctantly goes hunting. He finds a herd of cows and, after much hesitation, shoots one. Following instructions from a survival book, he butchers the cow and brings the meat home in a cooler. With the solar panels finally complete, Ish powers the house, allowing them to refrigerate food. Their joy is short-lived when Emma discovers a massive rat in the basement. She kills it by drowning as their traps are too small. Peering outside, they see hundreds of rats swarming the town and heading for their home. Realizing that trash is attracting the rats, Ish rushes outside to burn it, while Emma fends off the approaching rodents with a gun. To their dismay, they are forced to burn the remaining cow meat as well. Despite their efforts, the rats persist, forcing Ish and Emma to seal every door, window, and hole. Emma pours bleach into the toilet as a further precaution. A sudden sound of crying reveals they left Lucky outside, and the dog is being attacked by rats. Ish quickly opens the door, grabs Lucky, and runs back inside, but a few rats sneak in during the chaos. Ish attempts to shoot them but misses, as they are constantly moving. Instead, he resorts to smashing them with his gun in a desperate frenzy. Afterward, Emma tends to Lucky's wounds. The harrowing experience leaves Ish terrified of losing Emma during childbirth. Emma reassures him by confessing that she has successfully given birth to 2 daughters in the past without complications. She lost her entire family on the same day due to the virus. Months later, the rat infestation was finally under control, thanks to feral cats prowling the streets. A couple, Ish and Emma, unsealed their home and ventured outside for the first time. That same day, Emma went into labor, but complications arose when the baby's shoulder emerged first. Ish frantically searched for guidance in a book, but Emma took charge, instructing him on how to reposition the baby. Her quick thinking ensured a smooth delivery, and they became proud parents of a healthy baby girl. Feeling hopeful for the future, Emma painted their address on a town wall, inviting survivors to join them. A mysterious figure spotted the sign from afar. 6 years after the pandemic began, Ish was driving alone when he accidentally hit a lion. Preparing to mercy kill the injured animal, he noticed someone watching him from the woods. He chased after the figure, a young girl who fought back in fear. Ish stepped back and reassured her that he meant no harm, offering her food and safety with his group. Still wary, the girl followed him back to his truck, eventually accepting an apple and climbing onto the back. When they arrived at Ish's house, it was revealed that he and Emma now had 2 children, Heather and Alex, and had taken in 2 more survivors, Jorge and Maureen. Emma was also pregnant again. The group welcomed the girl warmly, but she remained silent and refused to leave the truck. Ish suspected she had PTSD. That night, she slept in the vehicle. The next morning, Maureen brought her breakfast. Startled, the girl accidentally caused the dish to fall. When Maureen grabbed her wrist to calm her, she noticed scars identical to her own. Maureen showed the girl her own scars and gently offered her trust, even allowing the girl to touch her hair. Slowly, the girl opened up. Maureen convinced her to take a bath and later discovered her belongings, a diary filled with disturbing drawings and a letter revealing her name, Evie. Calling her by name, Maureen gained more trust, and Evie accepted clean clothes and a room in the house. That evening, Maureen shared the letter with the others. It was written by Evie's mother, who pleaded for someone to protect her daughter. The letter revealed that Evie's father had abused her during the pandemic, while her sick mother was unable to intervene. The group decided to embrace Evie as part of their family. Not long after, Emma gave birth to a baby boy named Joey. A year later, during a calm day, the group's intruder alarm went off. Ish, Emma, and Jorge grabbed their weapons, leaving Maureen to protect the kids. Outside, they encountered a woman named Molly, armed and accompanied by her friends Jean, Ezra, and Rafe. After a tense exchange, they agreed to lower their weapons and return to the house for introductions. Molly's group explained they had come from Oregon, fleeing a flu outbreak. Emma offered them the neighboring house to stay in, though Ish remained wary. The following day, everyone prepared to go on a supply run, leaving the kids behind under strict rules from Ish. Molly inquired about medicine, but Ish told her the supplies were depleted and they needed to focus on food. In town, they encountered a buffalo in the street, which Ish warned them to ignore. The group split up to scavenge, but Molly broke the rules and ventured into the hospital. Inside, she found a gruesome scene filled with decayed bodies. Jean grabs several bottles of alcohol, while Ezra finds a guitar for her. When the group reunites to leave, they realize Molly is missing. At the hospital, Molly encounters a feral dog and scares it away with a fire extinguisher. She then uses the extinguisher to break a lock, gaining access to a backup stash of medicine. When she returns, Ish scolds her for breaking the rules but falls silent when she shows him the medicines she found. That night, Jean plays her new guitar and sings for everyone around a bonfire, while Ezra tells a few bad jokes. After everyone goes to bed, Jorge shares a cherished memory with Maureen, and they share an intimate moment for the first time. Meanwhile, Jean gets drunk in the kitchen. The next morning, Molly checks on Jean, who confesses she drank heavily in an attempt to terminate her pregnancy. Jean is clearly having a breakdown, but Molly promises not to tell Ezra. Time passes, and the group continues living peacefully. Jean gives birth to a healthy baby, and soon Maureen has a child as well. 14 years after the pandemic began, the group has formed a large, tight-knit family. They celebrate Heather's birthday, and Ish frequently takes Joey to the library to pass on his love for books. One afternoon, Ish and Joey notice strong winds and rain approaching, so they rush home to ensure everyone's safety. However, they discover Lucky is missing. Ish searches for him and is devastated to find that Lucky has been killed by a fallen tree. Emma joins him, and they grieve together, clinging to Lucky's body. The next day, they bury Lucky in the garden. Later, as Ish watches the children play, a mountain lion emerges from the bushes. Ish tells the children to run and throws himself in harm's way to protect them. The lion attacks him, mauling him severely. After years of silence, Evie screams for help, alerting the adults. The group rescues Ish and rushes him to the hospital. Molly, though only a former medical student, guides the group in treating Ish's injuries, even performing CPR to stabilize him before stitching his wounds. Meanwhile, Emma ventures into the woods, finds the mountain lion, and shoots it multiple times in revenge. When Ish wakes up, Molly admits she isn't a fully trained doctor, but Ish trusts her knowledge. He recovers and is soon able to walk again, rejoining his family. By the 17th year of the pandemic, Joey has become an excellent fisherman, making Ish proud, though this sparks jealousy in Alex. Rafe and Heather, now old enough to search for supplies on their own, explore abandoned houses. They are puzzled by remnants of the old world but grow close and eventually start dating. Both teens become eager to explore beyond their familiar surroundings. After some discussion, their parents agree to let them go. The teens load a car with supplies and weapons to ensure their safety. Not long after, Ezra notices that plants are unusually dry for the season. In the kitchen, Evie struggles with the faucet and accidentally breaks the handle in frustration. A visit to the reservoir reveals that the water has dried up due to a drought. The pipes, neglected for years, are rusted and broken. The group calculates that, even with strict rationing, they only have a week of water left. At that moment, 2 vehicles drive past, prompting the group to rush back to the house in case the strangers are dangerous. Shortly after, Charlie and Perry arrive at the gate, offering a canteen of water as a peace gesture. Charlie explains that his group discovered a drill outside Nevada and has been digging wells. They offer to share their knowledge. After some hesitation, Emma opens the gate, and the 2 groups share a meal. Ish agrees to trade all his spare fuel in exchange for a well. After lunch, Charlie begins digging, giving the group hope for a more sustainable future. The entire process of drilling for water is expected to take around hours. In the afternoon, Ish and Charlie go hunting together. Ish is startled when Charlie suddenly fires his gun behind him, killing an animal without warning. Charlie boasts about his sharpshooting skills, adding that he's had plenty of practice on more than just deer. Later, during dinner, Charlie shows off his scars and locks eyes with Evie, making her visibly uncomfortable. Ish notices this interaction but says nothing. The next morning, Ish warns Alex not to help Charlie with the drilling because he doesn't trust him. Alex dismisses his father's concerns, thinking Ish is being unreasonable, and decides to help anyway. When Ish shares his unease with Emma, she brushes it off, attributing it to paranoia. As the drilling progresses, Charlie struggles to break through a tough rock layer. After much effort, the drill finally penetrates, and the search for water continues. Ish watches with discomfort as his family bonds with Charlie's group, even joining them in singing around the fire. Feeling alienated and conflicted, Ish takes a walk in the woods to clear his head, but ends up getting lost. That evening, Charlie shares cigarettes with Jean and offers her liquor, which she declines. Charlie becomes pushy, but Jorge emerges from the house, causing Charlie to back off. Meanwhile, Emma grows worried about Ish's absence and starts preparing to search for him, but Ish returns just in time. Emma scolds him for disappearing without notice, and Ish admits his fear of what might happen if they strike water. The next day, the drill finally hits its target, and water gushes out of the ground. While the group celebrates, Ish tells Charlie to take the fuel and leave. But Charlie declares he's grown fond of this place and refuses to go. After the well is installed, the community throws a party, though Ish remains uneasy. Emma asks Perry about their group's next destination, and Perry admits she doesn't know, noting that Charlie has taken a liking to staying. Later that night, Ish hears a woman screaming and discovers Charlie leaving Evie's cottage, while Silas stands watch. Ish confronts Charlie, who dismisses his concerns and retreats to his RV, where Perry is also angry with him. Ish enters the cottage and finds Evie crying. Charlie has assaulted her. A family meeting is called to decide what to do. They agree that simply asking Charlie to leave won't work, as he might return and pose a greater threat. The family debates killing him. Some argue it's self-defense, while others consider it murder. Ultimately, they vote, and everyone agrees except for Jorge, who changes his vote under Maureen's insistence. Ish confronts Charlie, demanding he leave, but Charlie refuses. The family surrounds him, and Ish strikes Charlie's head with a hammer. Once Charlie falls, Ish continues to smash his head in a blind rage until Ezra pulls him away. Ish, shaken, keeps repeating, "We had to," as he washes the blood off the hammer. He bitterly reflects on the irony that the blood belongs to the man who provided them with water. Emma comforts Ish, reassuring him that he did what was necessary. The next morning, the group disposes of Charlie's body by throwing it into the ocean. They inform Perry that Charlie is gone, but that she and her people are welcome to stay. Perry, relieved, admits she was also a victim of Charlie's abuse. When the rest of the group is told about Charlie's death, Silas becomes angry, claiming Charlie never abandons plans. As Ish's family arms themselves in case of retaliation, Corey suggests it's better that Charlie is gone, and the majority of the group agrees. Silas calls them cowards and storms off. Later, Alex asks Ish what happened to Charlie. Ish explains that Charlie is gone because he hurt Evie. Alex struggles to process the news. Suddenly, Silas returns, asking to stay with the group. He praises Ish for being brave enough to stand up to Charlie's tyranny. However, Ish refuses to let Silas back in, prioritizing the safety of his family and community. Silas is also blamed for his role in guarding Charlie instead of warning the family about his actions. 20 years after the pandemic began, the Earth shows clear signs of recovery, with nature thriving in the absence of humans. Joey and Corey have been working diligently on building a modified version of Da Vinci's airplane. Though it requires a few more adjustments, they hope to fly it soon. Everyone is excited about the project except Alex, who remains bitterly jealous of Joey. One evening, Joey admits he isn't feeling well, and Ish prepares a root concoction for him. However, later that night, Joey stumbles into his parents' room, drenched in sweat, and collapses. Panicked, Ish rushes to find Molly, only to discover that Corey and other members of the group are also showing symptoms. Molly observes that the illness is progressing too quickly to be a common cold and suspects it might be connected to the original virus. Ish and Molly argue over the next steps, but are interrupted when Perry arrives, revealing that she too is sick. The entire household mobilizes to care for the ill under Molly's guidance. Ish, still in denial, focuses all his energy on Joey, staying by his side constantly. This favoritism frustrates Alex, who believes his father wouldn't be as worried if it were him instead of Joey. Sometime later, Heather returns alone, revealing that Rafe has died. She notices how exhausted her parents are and takes over a shift watching Joey. Despite everyone's efforts, Joey doesn't improve. Ish begins to believe his suffering is divine punishment for killing Charlie. Desperate for a solution, Ish decides to cut a hole in the barrier on the bridge, allowing him to cross into the nearby city. The city, now overgrown with plants, is eerily empty. Ish makes his way to the hospital, breaking through doors until he finds a stockpile of medicine. Along the way, he has another vision of Charlie, his guilt haunting him at every turn. Before returning, he stops at the chapel, praying for God to take him instead of Joey. Back at the house, Heather shares her journey with the others. She and Rafe had driven north in search of other survivors, but found only deserted towns and decaying landscapes. They marveled at the beauty of an untouched beach, but grew disheartened by their isolation. One day, they noticed numbers and arrows painted on buildings and trees. Following the trail led them nowhere, but they kept searching. Eventually, they camped on a mountaintop. A strange man appeared from the woods, startling them. Heather tried to approach him, but he fled. Later, the men returned, ambushing Rafe and stabbing him during a struggle. Heather, enraged, threw an axe, killing the man, but Rafe succumbed to his injuries shortly after saying goodbye. After burying Rafe, Heather began the long journey home on foot when her car broke down. Hearing Heather's tragic story causes Jean to start drinking again. When Ish returns from the city, he hastily prepares for a blood transfusion, believing his immunity might save Joey. Heather intervenes, calming Ish and advising him against acting rashly. She encourages him to speak to Molly, who has developed a new medicine derived from the yew tree. Ish carries Joey to Molly, who warns that the medicine may take days to show results. To lower Joey's fever, Ish gives him a freezing bath. Over the next few days, the sick gradually begin to recover. Molly explains that the illness is a weaker strain of the original virus, which allowed her to treat it. However, Corey talks to Heather and pieces together her description of Rafe's killer, realizing it was Silas. Corey now struggles with whether to reveal the truth or keep it secret. Tragically, the medicine does not work for Joey. As his condition worsens, he says his final words to his parents and passes away in his bed. Ish is devastated. Unable to process his grief, he storms out of the house and drives away at high speed, ignoring the pleas of his family to stay. After losing Joey, Ish spirals into despair. He finds the sign Emma painted years ago and covers it up, erasing the memory. Then, he storms into the library and begins destroying the books in a fit of anger and frustration. At the house, the group holds a small funeral for Joey and others who succumbed to the virus. They bury them together, mourning their loss. Later, Emma finds Ish at the library, clutching a match as if ready to set everything ablaze. She gently reminds him that the world was already broken before Joey's death, and that he still has other children and friends to live for. Her words reach him, and Ish returns to the house, though he remains unsure how to move forward. A few days later, Ish goes on a solitary hike and stumbles upon a breathtaking sunrise, revealing the beauty of the world as it is now. The scene inspires him, and when he returns home, he gathers the children and admits he's been wrong. He tells them he had been trying to teach lessons from the old world, but they now live in a new one. Ish declares that they no longer need him as their teacher because the world itself will teach them. A year passes before Ish finally gathers the courage to enter Joey's room. While sorting through Joey's belongings, he discovers his son's diary. The diary reveals Joey's dream of finding more people, even though Ish disagreed, and it includes a diagram for a radio with its own antenna. Inspired by Joey's vision, Ish rallies the group to work on building the radio. After much effort, they complete the radio and install the antenna atop the house. The machine works, but for a while there is no response. Ish dedicates every waking hour to trying different frequencies, hoping to reach someone. One afternoon, Emma convinces Ish to take a break and join a baseball game the others are playing with improvised equipment from the house. The game brings laughter and fun, but Heather starts to wonder why baseball has so many numbers involved. Ish explains that in the old world, people were obsessed with statistics, measurements, and rankings. This sparks Heather's memory of the numbers and arrows she saw during her journey with Rafe. Ish realizes the numbers could be a frequency. The group rushes to the radio and inputs Heather's numbers. After a tense silence, they finally receive a response. There's a 77-member community located less than 100 miles away in what used to be a state park. After careful deliberation, Ish's group invites the survivors to join their community, marking the beginning of a new chapter. 50 years after the start of the pandemic, an elderly Ish passes his hammer, a symbol of leadership and responsibility, to Heather's oldest son. As he does, Ish imparts his final lesson. Men and women come and go, but the earth abides. And this is the end. If you enjoyed the recap and want to stay with all our future content, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll never miss out any of our recaps.